Good evening and welcome to Going for Two. This is the only YouTube podcast in human recorded history to feature a male and female host drinking our way through the important topics of the day, as long as they touch the football world, but not in that way. I am Zach Law. This is So What, Sharona. It's May 10th, 2017, and I'll be on the beach next week, so this will be twice as good, or I'll be twice as distracted. And we, of course, have a guest tonight. So I often ask the New Mexico-bound Bob Harris about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but the FSWA Hall of Famer has no room in his brain for concepts other than football, beach body, sensible eating, football, rocking, and maybe an occasional book. He is the one who mocks the football diehard, Bob Harris.
I'm mocking as we speak. No, I'm not mocking right now. I was gone. 12 days I was out of the house. 12 entire days in a row. It was rather horrifying and harrowing. I'm back now, and I will resume the mockery. But I have done a couple. I did a couple pre-draft MFL 10s, but got to dive back in. The draft happened.
Yeah, I was just thinking today that I needed to start doing some mocks. And by the way, I must say that I do admire your taste in T-shirts.
Yeah, that's either your T-shirt or that's what they gave you instead of the gold jacket when you were the Hall of Famer.
I think that's what I wore when I got
Show it again. Show it again.
Actually, there is a picture of you wearing like a dress jacket. That must
awesome.
Be one.
It happens on occasion, usually with some kind of metal T-shirt underneath it.
Well, tonight, to inspire me, I have again, I think I had this last week, the barrel-aged Boulevard Bourbon Barrel Quad. And then to back it up, just came in season, the Founders from Michigan Breakfast Stout. And I got some beer trades I made. I actually picked up a couple of the Goose Island barley wines from the last 2 years. Don't know when I'm going to drink that. It isn't really scream beach beer. We can talk about beach beers later. But Sharona, are you taking advantage of the health advantages that wine offers you?
I am. You know, I did not get around to that link you sent me, but I am drinking a nice little sipping wine. I don't know, you can't see it. Let's see here. It is Menage a Trois California red blend, red wine. Yeah, it's nice.
I'm drinking too. The non-alcoholic beer is in my hand. I might actually sip on it, but I figured if I was gonna, gonna go into Rome and everything, I might as well go Rome.
Well, we appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let Sharona decide this one. So who do I get to quote out of the context first, our fine guest or you? Because I got a couple from our last talk. If anyone wants to catch up on Bob Harris, we talked last August. That's going to be the history lesson. Today is going to be the present, but I want to hear from you.
I'd say just do Bob.
Just do Bob. Well, who wouldn't? Here's a couple of quotes. This is from our last interview. Let them smoke weed, for crying out loud. And I am an old cheap bastard.
Yes. And I still agree with both of those.
I do too. Sentiments I approve.
Totally. I mean, isn't it silly? I mean, we're, in an NFL where they will pump them full of Toradol or whatever else they can get their hands on. What did the Falcons spend on pain-killing medication? What was the big story? I don't know. But anyway, the kids smoke weed. This just in. And the headlines.
Newsflash.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I guess, you look at, for a sport that has enough negative news and headlines surrounding it anyway, why create artificial news and headlines when somebody gets caught with weed? The kids are going to smoke it. Let them smoke it. Quit testing. Just pretend it, do NBA style. What the hell's the matter with that?
Yeah. I agree. I used to, I don't know if we talked about this last time or not, just real quick. I used to be completely drug test, and if you fail and blah, 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 blah. And I was already starting to come around, but I've told this story before. There's an article about what Jason Taylor went through to try to stay on the field, and with the tubes and everything, and going down into the basement and shots in the feet and all of that. And I was like, this is crazy. How is that better than, and I would even take it even further. If they want to take something therapeutic that helps them heal, I don't care.
Right. It's, there's, a lot of these guys are pretty well do a lot of research and figure a lot of this stuff out and use a lot of cutting edge, technology and stuff, guys sleeping in hyperbaric chambers.
Right.
But whatever it takes to get them off the narcotic painkillers. Apparently, there are so many people on opioid painkillers in this country. There is now has commercials for opioid constipation medications. Think about this for a minute, okay? So many opioids out there that the drug companies have decided to create and market something for constipation arising from opioids. That means there's a lot of money in it, which means there's a lot of money in the opioids, which means a lot of people are really messed up. I just think that there's a lot better ways to do things. And again, I guess the bigger concern would be performance enhancing type drugs. Although you could say
they're
Le'Veon Bell,
already taking supplements and things. I mean,
right. Well, I mean, Le'Veon Bell, Martavis Bryant, and Josh Gordon might be good arguments that weed is performance enhancing. But aside from that, experience tells me it's really not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting. I can go on for hours and hours. Don't get me started. So, but yeah, I've said this before too. The drug industry makes a lot of money off of what it is able to legally pander to people, and there's a problem when it's the income inequity is like it is, and of course guys that make it in the NFL have money at their disposal, but it's a larger problem in society, in that the legal stuff that you can get is incredibly expensive, and so.
And if we want to get off into supplements too, I mean, there's a lot of things they don't test for. Human growth hormone is something because the NFLPA has successfully kept. It's more invasive testing, and I'm sure most everyone in the NFL is clean, because everyone who's 6'4", 300 pounds and runs a 4.7 40 just did that, right? It all happens in the gym, right? All natural happens in the gym.
Completely natural. And then when they get out of the league, watch them shrink down and become normal sized people.
And this is a big complaint I have. Well, a big issue I have with the NFL. Look, the NFL is, it's become a collision sport. It's we love to see that kind of thing, but we're at the point where the physics have become dangerous. It's all about the mass and the force and the velocity. All those things Sir Isaac Newton found a kabillion years ago, I believe, that hold true. And you have joints that, you can't do anything for the joints. I mean, they're meant to handle certain stresses and forces, and we're putting them past that. And so the hits that can be delivered, the speed at which guys are moving, given the size they are, I worry about some of the bigger receivers. You think about Calvin Johnson, running up and down the field at 6'5", 240 pounds, whatever, running a sub 4.5 40. I mean, that's a lot of pounding. These guys are a little bit like dragsters. You run them up and down the strip a couple of times. You got to take them apart and put them back together. And you see, let's say a guy like Des Bryant, making these acrobatic catches, jumps up in the air, comes down on his back. That's not like, a little fella coming down. I mean, when he falls, there's a fair amount of force that goes with that. And I think, especially given the playing surfaces we see, I just think it's something that should be considered, going forward. I mean, I know the league is doing, look, they want to have a league. It's the most fantastic golden goose ever. The eggs are delightful. So they need to start taking some of these things into account as they plan going forward, including pain management, natural means for dealing with that, as well as in testing for some of the other things that they can't test for now that are performance enhancing but can't be tested for.
Yeah, well, just, again, I could go on, and I think one of the problems that the league has right now, and we can move on from this, but is that we don't have a nationwide strategy on it. It's so piecemeal that it's incredibly difficult to formulate an all-encompassing. I was going to say overreaching. It probably would be overreaching too, but an all-encompassing kind of policy when it's legal in one state, not legal in another.
Right.
So there's no continuity. So maybe when the feds and the states get together and actually do something constructive, if they ever, then
So something I think,
easier.
is also worth. I mean, the NFL, they have a lot of policies. There, substance abuse policy, domestic violence policy, or various things. What they really have is a PR policy. They
Hmm.
which way's that wind blowing? That's where we're going, and
Hmm.
that's something they need to come to grips with as well. I think they need to have some really, they need to come up with some smart policies that foresee some things. It's not an easy thing. I'm not, it's easy to sit here and be critical of them, but they do tend to gauge the which way the public opinion breeze is blowing before they take action or make a move or make a decision.
They're very reactive and not very
Yes.
proactive.
Yeah, that was totally the draft this year and some of the players that off the field issues.
Yeah.
I thought I'd throw out a kind of a warm-up question before we get into draft talk. So in our last discussion, we were talking before the season last year. So what did we know? We knew nothing. And we talked about Arian Foster, and both Bob and Sharona were like, about Arian Foster. So when you make a bad move in fantasy, how much is the appropriate amount of mourning to get over that pick and move on to the next?
You must be a defensive back. You got to be a defensive back. You got to forget it. You got to drop it and move on. That's one of the hardest things, for look, emotions are something we deal with, in life and in fantasy football and things. We make an emotional investment in something. Your ability to divorce emotions from the process, at least the decision-making process. Look, have fun, enjoy it, root, cheer, bitch, moan, talk crap, all that kind of stuff. But when you're making decisions, and trying to, be successful and build a successful team, you have to be emotionless. You have to divorce emotion the best you can. And I try really hard. And I mean, I can't, nobody can really do it all the way, but that's part of the thing with these guys that, oh, look, he's got a chance. I think, he can make it. I'm already investing heavily in Martavis Bryant. We mentioned him. The knucklehead factor is high with this guy. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's, and so, I mean, I go into that, making that investment or the investments I make in him, I go into that knowing that it might fall through. I mean, so you just steel yourself for that so that when the worst does happen, or if the worst does happen, same with, if people looking at Jamal Charles this year, people looking at Adrian Peterson this year, they'll probably be drafting both of those guys ahead of me, I'm pretty sure. But when you realize that, oh, look, it's still that Adrian Peterson that averages 1.9 yards a carry, be ready to move on. I mean, you've seen it, you've got a pretty good baseline of information. If he outperforms that, great. But if you invest in that and it's starting to disappoint you, don't be too reluctant to move on. You've seen this show before.
And I assume you developed some pretty good fantasy calluses over the years.
Yeah, and I guess that, you try to take advantage of the opposite too. When every year you come up with players who disappointed people, and there's going to be people that you play against that there's going to be guys they don't draft because they're there's too much baggage. They got burned, and I try not to be that guy. I try to say, look, a guy burns me one year, I might avoid him, but everyone has value at the right price. It's more about the price than it is, the potential for disaster. If I'm paying for a guy to potentially be disastrous, and I'm paying a reasonable price, I'm fine with that. It's just I don't want to overpay for that. And when I do overpay for that, I need to be able to let go of it as soon as I see signs that it's happening. And, we've all made mistakes of letting go of guys too soon. I mean, you can think of any number of players that start slow and end up, faring a little better as the season goes on. I mean, how many people hate Eddie Lacy for the first month of every season and then, oh, okay, it's not that bad, for the most part, last year excluded. But, there's always going to be those guys and guys that are getting picked up off the waiver wire. But I mean, you have to work with what you're seeing at the time, and just don't let be emotionless in your assessment when you're doing it. Try to take a step back from that investment that you made and that you have in a player when you're making decisions. Doesn't mean you just bail on them, but you want to be logical.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to do that. It's the sunken cost fallacy. Your first round pick sucks for a few weeks. I mentioned last time we talked, like Trent Richardson after his rookie year. Like, it was 3 weeks into the season, you knew he was toast, but you just kept holding on, like maybe. And what if someone else picks him up and he does well? And that never happened.
That's the biggest fear, right? Is somebody else is going to make hay with one of your rejects, and that's, again, you got to be the defensive back of your and you get burned once, you just jump back up and try again. I think the satisfying, or the thing that you can sit there and think about is redemption comes every year in the form of it happens over and over. Justin Forsett, whether it's last year, every year there's a running back that comes out of nowhere. There's Jordan Howard last year to a degree. There's guys that come out of nowhere. Zach Stacy, looking back in time. I mean, you can always find somebody who's going to be on the rise.
Antonio Andrews.
Yeah, it's all about opportunity and circumstances, and that doesn't always hold true according to Devontae Booker. Not everyone delivers when the opportunity arises.
We had to mention him.
Right, but especially with running backs, I mean, opportunity is the key for that, and maybe even for quarterbacks on the right team. If you're Dak Prescott, I mean, there's things to look for. I don't think you're going to be betting on those guys, on the quarterbacks, as much. But we all know running backs. I was reading some numbers, when I was thinking about Adrian Peterson. He's going to make $18 million. The Vikings, if they want to pay that, well, why don't they want to pay that? Because he's over 30. $18 million is a boatload of money, especially when the average running back made $1.6 million last year. I mean, it's a young man's position, and they've worked for cheap. This year's, free agency told you that. Even Adrian Peterson figured it out, that position doesn't hold the same value. It's transitory. Anyone can step in and play it. There's other positions that teams are more worried about, and with good reason. And if, as a fantasy owner, you need to keep that in mind. We going back to 1986 when I started playing, you wanted the feature back, and this just isn't the same league. You're not that between the tackles guy is not the same, doesn't hold the same value in the NFL that he did back then. Now it's the satellite backs hold equal, and in some cases greater value, and they're more abundant too. So, we're all excited. We mentioned the draft, Leonard Fournette versus Christian McCaffrey. That's going to be a decision a lot of people are making. It's a decision, at least one team made in Philadelphia.
It's an easy decision for me.
Is it?
Team Panthers over here.
I shall not. Now, if you're watching out there and we're in the same league, I do not like the Panthers. Christian McCaffrey's going to be a big bust.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love
this year's Derrick Henry hopes.
No, I love Zach knows. I love Christian McCaffrey, and I was mocking him to the Panthers before the draft happened. I like Leonard Fournette too. I'm just not. I'm really concerned about the Jaguars' offense.
Yeah, I think there's reason for that. I just did. I think it was the Sunday after the draft. I did my first draft with rookies, and McCaffrey was a guy I got. Look, I draft Danny Woodhead every single draft that I can. I will single-handedly push his ADP up 3 rounds before all is said and done, because what you want is that guy. And I mean, look, if he's going in the 8th, 9th round or whatever, all the greater. But if I can get him in the 6th round or whatever, if I'm pushing a little bit, because in the leagues that we tend to play in, you're playing with a lot of people who play a lot. You have to reach a little bit, because everyone wants to be the smartest person in the room, and so they're willing to reach a little bit to get their guys. And I think the history tells us with Woodhead and guys like him. I mean, you can get running back 1 numbers on any given week. In fact, in Woodhead's case, on a lot of weeks, it's been in the past. And you look at the situation in Baltimore, they throw the ball a lot. This just didn't too. And it's kind of sketchy. Otherwise, I mean, Terrence West gets the first shot at the early down roll with Kenneth Dixon out. We're still excited about Kenneth Dixon. I'm not sure why, because he hasn't shown a heck of a lot. He's and the suspension this year, 4 games, is not gonna help him. West is maybe good early season play, but still, you look at a Woodhead in that offense where they throw the ball that much. He's going to be the next Kyle Juszczyk, and we all saw how that worked out for Kyle Juszczyk. The most best paid fullback. Yep.
I'm with you, Bob. I draft Danny Woodhead every year too, and usually in multiple leagues. But I don't know. I'm just gonna depend, because when was the last time he played a full season?
Well, that's the nature of the position, though. I mean, there are some guys that are going to be more durable. His size does make him susceptible, I think, to injuries. But I mean, it's been nothing really chronic. Again, I think we've talked about this before, but injury agnostic is another thing I try to be, and that also is difficult.
Yeah. Okay.
it's difficult, but I mean, unless the guy has a chronic issue, look, I mean, you know, again, we're talking about a game where there's very large men moving in weird directions that the body wasn't designed to move. Guys are going to get hurt. It's just, that's how it is. And so unless it's like a chronic issue, you know, you look at a Marquise Lee where he just can't, you know, the hamstrings, he's a wound tight guy. That to me is a little more of a chronic issue. But when it comes to most, you know, I'm willing to overlook a lot of the guys who have injury issues. I mean, Eddie Lacy would be another one. He gets beat up. He's a big guy. He takes a pounding, but he's been remarkably, you know, last year aside, he's held up pretty well to the beating and comes on as the season goes on. I'm not going to let the injuries, you know, an injury or an injury a year throw me off. I'm gonna stick with those guys and hopefully draft the depth that it takes to fill in for them when they do get hurt.
Well, plus with Woodhead, it's like you get great results when he plays, and once he gets hurt, just pick somebody else up. You know, you don't have to keep that position usually, unless you have some kind of weird IR situation. But do you think, Bob, because of last year, because Ezekiel Elliott had such a great year, that the rookies are going to go a little higher than they should, kind of like after that crazy rookie wide receiver rookie year?
Right.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, people overreact and kind of have to sit back and let someone take, because I saw like Fournette. It seemed like he and McCaffrey going like third, fourth round in some of these.
Yeah, McCaffrey
early.
Yeah, I think you are. I think you're going to see that, and then the hope is obviously that, you know, that you do get those numbers. I should remind everyone though that not everyone has a Dallas Cowboys offensive line. Hell, the Cowboys don't even have the Cowboys offensive line anymore. So, you know, that's something worth noting. I would have been, you know, I'm, you know, a little bit excited about what's going on in Oakland with Marshawn Lynch, even though I'm not big on drafting older running backs and, you know, investing heavily, and you'll probably have to invest heavily to get him. But boy, that offensive line is built for him. It seems like, you know, in Oakland, I mean, that's a road grader unit. So, that kind of interests me. A lot of teams have put a lot of effort into improving their offensive line. I wish the Jaguars had been more successful for Leonard Fournette's sake. And I think another thing, you know, we're all kind of keen on the defensive players they have, but the Jaguars scoring defense was not great last year, right? And, you know, that's why Blake Bortles ended up, you know, as a top 10 fantasy scorer, because they were playing from behind so much. And you wonder if that's going to still be an issue or not. So that's something that we're going to have to watch too. I do think the defense is going to improve. I think they have a lot of talent on that unit, and hopefully they will make some strides. But I mean, those are things you have to think about too. Is what are the game scripts going to be for that team, or is it going to be the same as last year where Blake Bortles is, you know, the onus is on him in every fourth quarter or every second half? That'll be an issue for Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, it is definitely a situation, because like the Scott Fish Bowl last year, which had bonuses for carries, I ended up taking Ezekiel Elliott number 2 overall, and it actually turned out to be a good pick. But usually it's like, rookie running backs.
I think Elliott was a guy we were all, I mean, you know, as soon as he was drafted, I can remember being at the draft the year before, and the Cowboys had a chance to, you know, were in position to draft Duke Johnson, and I'm like rubbing my hands together. I didn't care who went there. I just wanted somebody to go there. So when it turned out to be Elliott last year, I was all in. You know, I mean, it's easy to worry about the bust potential of rookies, but, you know, when guys go to the right situation, it's the right situation. It's hard to deny that. And in Elliott's case, it was impossible to deny, and he bore it out. In Fournette's case, I think there are concerns. In McCaffrey's case, I mean, you know, he's a little different player, and you know, fills a number of different needs for an offense that claims it wants to evolve, and you know, and needs to take a little bit of pressure off their quarterback, or a lot of bit of pressure off their quarterback, or all the pressure they can off him. You know, you look at a guy like Dalvin Cook. I would like to see him go somewhere else probably than the team that invested in Latavius Murray, and you know, they did put the Vikings did put a lot of money in the offensive line. I think, you know, it could be a good fit there, but you know, for some time he's going to split to some degree, and I mean, that's a worry for a runner like him. I think he's a guy I liked an awful lot just based on talent, and I like that people are backing off him. And I was thinking, boy, wouldn't it be great if he went to Green Bay, where there will be no 8 men in the box ever, where, you know, you have a quarterback who could take advantage of his skills too in the open field. I just thought it would be a great place for him, but they went a little later. And that was the thing for running backs this year, right? I mean, the depth was there, and teams didn't overpay. They were wise. They were wise in their drafts, and a lot of backs went later in the draft that I think could have a little impact.
Yeah, it was weird. Like fantasy football guys were GMs this year because like the top 9 picks, 6 were offensive skill guys, and that was not what anybody predicted. But we want to hear about the whole boots on the ground experience. What was it like, doing the Bob Harris road trip? How was it like being in Philadelphia? When did you get there? What was it like?
I got to Philadelphia the day before the draft. I've never been to Philadelphia before. This is something I'm getting keen on as I become quite old. Going to places I have not been before, so it was a great opportunity. And thanks to SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio for that. But yeah, it was great. The first impression was the cab driver was nuts. It was scariest cab ride ever and very enjoyable. But just I really like the city. I've gone to New York City for the first time last summer, and for someone who hasn't been there, until you're 55 years old, I mean, it's quite a wow. This is great. Philadelphia is kind of like a little slightly scaled down, mellower version. Not everybody's in a hurry like they are in New York. I mean, you're walking down the street in New York and everyone's just running over you. Philadelphia, they're standing outside their door talking to you for a minute and stuff. So I really like the vibe of Philadelphia. Got a chance to walk around before the draft, saw all the things, the Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, all that kind of stuff. And just took a lot of time to walk around the city. Found a good cheesesteak and all that kind of stuff. That was kind of one of the goals. So I thought it was just it was a great city just to see, just to go visit for someone who hasn't been there. I thought that was great. In addition, fantastic job on the draft. I was so impressed with not just the crowd and how they behave. I believe, the first night was 100,000 people. And I believe, if I remember correctly, they had one arrest the entire time. And that was for someone flying a drone recklessly or something. I mean, it was just an amazing crowd, and of course, the very vocal and having a great time. But just the way the city set it up. I'd been to Chicago the 2 years before, and Chicago was a fantastic place. They have a problem in Chicago. It's called Michigan Ocean, and they pretend it's a lake, but you can't see the other side, and it has waves. So it's Michigan Ocean, and you're right on that thing when you're doing the draft. We covered outside. And there is a cold wind that blows off that ocean. And it was freezing there. Both years we covered the draft there. So
it was cold.
It was freezing cold. I mean, it was like, it'll kill you cold. And last year I took some like high-tech undies and stuff, the long johns. I was all set. And it was still pretty unbearable. But Philadelphia was actually a little bit warm. They had perfect weather. The venue where they had it set up, the Museum of Art, the Rocky Stairs is basically where it was. Just a fantastic setup, well done, easy to get in and out of. I just thought it was a fantastic job. I hope they do it again next year, although that denies me an opportunity to go to a new city. I'll take that because they did a really great job and they earned it, I thought.
Yeah, it did look like they did a great job, and they are going to be from what I've been told, they invoked the clause in their contract to do it again next year. And I'm definitely going to do my best to make it this next year. I was couldn't be too disappointed because it just wasn't in the cards for me this year. But it did look like they did such an amazing job, and so I'm excited.
And they have good food there. You'll be surprised to learn. They make these sandwiches from steaks with cheese, and it's a big deal. And
two of my favorite things.
And so I did try one of those, and there was an establishment very close to my hotel in downtown called the Reading Terminal Market, which is like a ginormous, it's like the entire floor for bottom of a huge building, but it's just endless eats. It reminded me of the farmers market, the Pike's Place Market in Seattle. To a degree, except just a lot more stuff, it seemed like. Very, some really good food, but, also, butchers, bakers. I mean, just everything you could imagine in this place, and really easy and accessible to get into. I had a really great time there as well.
Yeah, that reminds me of when I was in New York last year. It seemed like every 3 blocks there was some kind of like mall or something, and they had 50 different kinds of food, and you really could get anything you wanted. So would would you take a cheesesteak first like #1 draft pick for Philly food, or other options?
That would have been my choice going in, but I had this roasted pork sandwich on day 2, which was it rivaled. I went to Jim's Cheesesteaks, which is supposedly the kind of I mean there's a lot of different ones you can go to, and I'm sure the comments will be telling us all about many of them any moment now. But and it was really good, and I mean fantastic, no complaints, really enjoyed it. But I went to Tommy Dinnick's, I believe, I don't know the pronunciation, in the Reading Terminal Market, and had a roasted pork sandwich with some poblano chilies on it. Holy cow, was that fantastic. And so that would be my first round pick right now. It'd be a surprise. It would be a bit of an outlier, I guess I would be, because it was really good.
So what was it like getting together with your Sirius crew and then some outsiders every day?
It's always a good time. The Sirius people are all fantastic. And we have a really good time when we go out. Matt Deutsch, our program director, makes a point of making sure everyone has a good time. John Hansen, the guru, threw us a little shindig at his house the first night, which was fantastic, and pretty much everyone made it there. But I mean, you're working with some fantastic people, and my own co-host Mike Dempsey, Jeff Mans, my Sunday co-host. You go on to Brandon Marianne Lee from Pro Football Focus, Jeff Ratcliffe, Mike Clay, Joe Dolan, and Matt Camp. Lisa Ann is there, and her and I are very good friends, and ended up doing a lot of stuff together. That was great. Look, it's just a good time. Rob Tuzet, saw some of my producers, the kids that we work with, the young men and women who are kind of the behind the scenes people who do your everyday shows. One or two of them gets to go to these events, and whenever you do them. And this time it was Phil Backert and Tristan Plunkett. Phil is my Sunday morning producer, who has done an amazing job. A tenacious, savage young man who just will not let guests off the hook, and love him, and Tristan as well. And everyone makes sure they have a really good time. And if you've known some of these people and some of the personalities, Tommy G was there. Some of the personalities that you hear on Sirius, it's much like what you hear. It's a really good group, and pretty knowledgeable people. Always enjoy seeing Mike Clay. He and I have a shared interest in the delightful eats, and always take advantage of that whenever we're together. So I really enjoyed that. It's a good bunch of people. And I guess, everyone says that. I don't really work with people, right? I mean, I've worked, my home is my office for 20 plus years now. And so you get in situations where you're talking, and you work with people every day. I mean, I've worked with everyone in the industry. You just don't really do it face to face. Now that I'm with Sirius and I get out to some of these events, maybe you do some of the FSTA events, etc., you start seeing these people that you've known for all these years that, I really like working with people, but working with them in human form is a little bit different. It's a good time, and I like that these events give me a chance to do that.
Yeah, I work at a job where like half my team's in other cities, so it is
right.
odd to occasionally do that face to face. Like, wait, I'm not sure how to have a conversation with somebody without a little lag or.
Right. We have a really nice setup. So I mean, I think a lot of people wouldn't realize. I'm in Albuquerque. My regular co-host Mike Dempsey's in Florida. The studio's in Baltimore. I think people, I hear from people all the time that think we're all sitting in one room, and you're really not. Thanks to technology. But I can remember a few years back at an FSTA event, John Hansen and I were covering an industry draft, and we sat down. And I've gotten this business in 1993. I think John got in 95 or 96. We've been frenemies and competitors, and you go at it with each other over the years. We're sitting down, and I'm realizing this is the first time I've ever seen John face to face, and here we are. After nearly 20 years of doing this, grinding away at this, and having people ridicule us in the early years, what the hell are you doing? We're covering a draft live for a radio station that does nothing but fantasy football. And it was an interesting moment when you reach that realization, wow, maybe this wasn't the stupidest idea I ever had.
Yeah, it seems to have worked out pretty well. So you're able to get like a week off after the draft? You did like civilian stuff?
I did. I visited my hometown of Tucson, Arizona, hung out with family and friends, ate things, I don't, you know, you guys know this. I'm a little bit of I'm pretty strict on, you know, eating and exercise and nutrition and exercise and whatnot. But I kind of have a rule when I leave the confines of the house. I'm in my house at least 340 days a year. And when I'm here, I rarely walk out the door. People bring me things. I have, you know, I don't get out a lot. I cook all my meals. I eat everything. I track my nutrition carefully. So when I walk out the door, it's free range. If it gets in my way, I'm going to eat it. And so
I love it.
Yeah, and I went to great lengths to push that theory, as most of the people who unfriended me on Facebook during the course of my food porn rampage last week would tell you.
What kind of crazy, stupid person would do that? Come on,
that's really. Food porn's my favorite porn.
Right. There was a great amount of it on my Facebook feed. And it was great, you know, going, you know, see my mom and dad, who are obviously, I'm old, so they must be somewhat older, although you wouldn't know it from hanging out with them. But it was nice to see them, and a number of old friends got to spend some time with as well. And I ate everything. Sometimes I ate it twice. I ate things twice. It was great.
Not bad. So let's talk the Bob Harris kind of calendar. So once you're past the draft, how far are you into like magazine season?
I'm a week behind on magazine season because I went to Tucson and I ate a bunch of stuff, but we didn't mention that. No, literally the draft is the green flag for magazine season, basically. And I think for a lot of us, you know, it's the green flag for fantasy football. You know, I mean, you know, a lot of people get more serious. You know, everyone has a name on their helmet, or, you know, we know where everyone's going. So it gets pretty serious. We do 4 magazines every year. That's a good 1,000+ pages of content that have to come together over the course of 2 months, you know, and they kind of are done both serially and in parallel, depending on the time. So you know, the first one will be out we'll be finished the first week of June. And then after that, the third week of June, I think we have 2 the third week of June and 1 the first week of July. So there's a lot of, it gets pretty intense. A lot of moving pieces, a lot of contributors. Like to get a lot of voices from the industry involved as much as we can, and so it requires a lot of watching the pieces move, and actually I actually have to do some writing too, so that it's quite a thing. So I am right now about a week behind, slowly but surely catching up, and I'll get back ahead of stuff. What I call ahead is being not as behind, but yeah, you feel like that's a kind of a thing. It's just like football season, magazine season. It's just shorter, but it's a time when you feel like you always need an extra day to get everything done you want. But it's a good time, and we're already in the midst of it.
Well, how do you stay ahead of, or at least try to keep up with the technology? Because there were years when, you know, the magazine, that's all people had, and they had a magazine that was done in probably July. And now you have the magazine, but then it always includes supplements and things like that. But what else?
I think the thing that's kind of, you know, made this or kept the magazines alive, at least for I think the ones that I do, and I should mention them. The Pro Forecast, which has been around, this is the 28th year. Fantasy Football Cheat Sheets, Fantasy Football Draft Book, which I think is over 20 now as well, and the Football Diehards magazine, which is kind of, you know, goes as a companion to our website, footballdiehards.com. But I think, you know, the goal, kind of something that, you know, I talked the publishers into, and they've kind of followed up on, is you know, you have a website, use that as an extension of the magazine. So, you know, it makes perfect sense when the magazine comes out, it has some, you know, passwords, etc., or some ways to acquire passwords, so you can get into our premium content as part of the magazine. So we realized, you know, we're not stupid. I mean, well, okay, we're kind of stupid, but we realized that.
No, you're not.
Well, we realized that I mean, look, I spend I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So that, for starters, is a miserable thing to be when you do magazines, because they're done. You know, you don't get to fix things. There's a million of them out there on newsstands, and whatever's there is there. And we go to great lengths to try to limit errors and stuff. But I mean, things happen and it's not perfect. So the website gives you not only a chance to fix anything like that happens on the occasions it does happen, but look, things change the minute that thing walks out the door. There's new news, new information, and we used to live in an era when the off season was something that people like me used to get ready and be an expert when the season starts. Now the off season is something everyone uses for that very same reason. You're not getting the jump on it. I mean, there's look, obviously there are different levels of interest from people who play, but you have to go for the greatest common denominator, right? I mean, you're selling ice to the Eskimos, and you have to think about it like that. And you have to consider that everyone who is getting your magazine knows, not only do they know a lot about football, they're pretty sure that they should have your job. And were it not a quirk of fate or something else, they should be and would be doing your job. And, for a lot of them, it's true. So you try and take that approach to what you're doing. The website allows you to do that, whether it's the rankings, whether it's updating content, updating moves, etc. Those are the things. And that's the big advantage of technology. When I first got into this business, in 93, I mailed and faxed information. And in 94, 95, when one of my subscribers said, there's this thing where, I have at this company, it's called the World Wide Web. And you're going to want to look into that. And as soon as I realized I could send 1 million things for the same price I could send 2 things, it seemed like a pretty good idea. So I think as much as you can leverage that technology, you're obviously, doing the wise choice. And as people move forward, get into apps, etc., I mean, that's a big deal for a lot of these guys. We have apps as well. I think the things that can push content right to people's mobile devices, that's the next level. So whatever we can get, as much as we can move our magazines to people's mobile devices, that's where they're looking at things now. When you get your information back on, on what parts of your website are being accessed and where they're being accessed from. I mean, so much of it is mobile. As much as you can push your information to those people, you're better, the better you're going to do. So all these things are part of the calculation with the magazines, trying to make it something that not only, is something they can buy on a newsstand and hold in their hand, because there are still people that like to do that. There are still people that want that hard copy. So one of the things you do is for articles, you look more at strategies. And, the good news there is look at your Twitter. Look at all the people on your Twitter who are doing incredible forward thinking, strategy. I mean, it's just, there's so many people out there doing it. So it's easy to find, Twitter is where I look, for writers mostly. And there's no shortage of people out there doing incredibly intelligent work that makes your magazines, makes the product better, and it's evergreen. It's not, it's not bound by the confines of time. So that's kind of what you're looking for are things about strategies and teaching people how to, how to think outside the box a little bit and include those things in their strategies. That's kind of what we're going for.
So you think people are going to be talking a lot about zero RB since last year? The receivers kind of died out and the running backs had a little better year than 2 years ago.
Everyone's chasing. I mean, that's one of the things, I've said this since I got in the business. What's my goal every year? Not drafting last year's best team. I want to draft this year's best team. I know, and it sounds stupidly simple.
Never goes the same.
Right, but that's the thing. And I think the big thing is, even when, people love their zero RBs, people love whatever it is, there's always something to be said for zigging when everyone else is zagging, right? So, if everyone's going zero RB, well, okay, maybe I go RB heavy, I mean, and I think but there's various approaches. And I think most of us play in enough leagues now where you can actually experiment a little bit. And I think that's a lot of what I do. I mean, every year I say I'm cutting back, and I'm cutting back again this year. And by the time September rolls around, I'll be in 25 season long leagues again, and wondering how the hell that happened.
Preach it. Same here.
Right. I mean, you just, you don't turn down any invitations but I think that gives you a chance to experiment a little bit. And, even if I end up with a lot of the same guys on a lot of those teams, how I acquire them is different in the different drafts. And, and I guess at the end, when you're sitting, there on your website and on a radio, trying to tell people or help people make lineup decisions, the more you're making, the better you're in position to help them. And that's always the goal. And it's always a good excuse that I use every year when I come up short in championships. I say, well, I'm not here to win championships for me. I'm here to win them for you, my readers. And so, but that's one of the things is experimenting with a variety of approaches and not getting caught up, all the positives of Twitter and these things. There's also dangers of groupthink and getting caught up, in whatever the popular thing is at any given time. Fortunately, I'm too old to understand what's popular and what's not. I'm just lucky to keep up. And so I don't get as caught up in it maybe as some people, but that is a danger, I think, of all this. Look, when I go on the radio, I make a point of not listening to other people on the radio, because when I say things, I want to be saying things that are, if not necessarily original, thoughts, original to me. And it's easy to, when you hear other people talking to Corbin, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You want to hear what everyone's thinking, you want to hear ideas, but it's worrisome to me that I get too caught up in any one person or listen to any one person. There are people that I do listen to religiously and they tend to be very smart, and it's worth my time to invest in them. And if I get a little caught up in it, that's okay. But for the most part, I want to be careful about getting caught up in the group think and what everyone else, the direction everyone else is running. I don't want to be part of the herd. I want to kind of be a little bit of an outlier, or at least be able to talk about what they're doing from an observational instead of an invested standpoint.
What you just said made me think of a question, and trends fascinate me. I kind of like to pay attention to trends in fantasy football, and I'm definitely one of the ones you mentioned earlier who, if a guy burns you one year, you might not. But do you find that the opposite is true too, that players who fantasy football players who have a lot of success with a player, they'll return to that same well the next year?
Right. Yeah, I do. I think it's a natural thing, and that's, it's easy to be blind or to overlook changes that might adversely affect them. Whether it's scheme or personnel or whatever it might be, coaching changes, minor things that are going to have an impact. Look, I remember talking to people at the draft saying, wow, I hope the Chargers they need a complimentary back, that Danny Woodhead guy, to play alongside Melvin Gordon. Dude, those coaches are gone. Anthony Lynn, you look at his history in the league, going from running back to running back coach to, his time as a coordinator. I think in 13 of his 14 years as an NFL coach, he's been associated with a 1,000-yard runner in those 13 seasons. And Buffalo led the league in rushing. They didn't really do it using a satellite back, right? So I'm not sure that's going to, it's not the same San Diego team, guys. It's a different team. Well, they're Los Angeles, beg my pardon. So it's even more different. Right. So those are things that you have to keep in mind and you have to pay attention to. And I think when you have success with a player or success with a team or success from a certain offense, you have to look at what the changes are from year to year to make sure that they aren't going to affect your guy.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon seemed like he was the guy until he got hurt. He actually
right. And I guess it's easy to for a guy like that, you look at him and wow, Anthony Lynn, this is a great thing. And you look at all what he did last year. Well, a lot of what he did last year was score touchdowns. And, that's something I always get leery from guys that were heavily touchdown dependent, because a lot of that is circumstance. I'm not laying off Gordon this year, but it's something I maybe will use to temper my enthusiasm. I've targeted him some this year, but he's gone a little bit earlier than I want to, a little bit sooner than the price I want to pay. So I'm not afraid to miss on a guy who I think is in line for some regression. If somebody else is going to be the hero on that, or, I'm fine with that. I think I draft well enough that I'll find other guys, but those are things you have to watch. But that Anthony Lynn with him does kind of appeal to me, right? I mean, you look at the coaching history, and that's something I've always, looked at since I got into the hobby is, you look at NFL head coaches more so than the coordinators, although if they have a history as a coordinator, that's very helpful. And what is a coach's goal? You're in a league where every week everything changes. The opponent changes, the scheme you're going up against changes, the personnel you're playing changes every week. What does a head coach want to do? He wants consistency. he will go to great lengths to make as much the same from week to week as he can. Look, there have to be changes, and some guys are more comfortable with it, Bill Belichick says, than others. They're more willing to adjust. But there's a lot of coaches that want to keep, their same philosophy, same approach, etc. And that's something that
like Novocaine, it'll eventually work.
Yes, exactly, and that's right. And so I mean, you could take advantage of that as a fantasy owner if you follow along.
I got another question for you. It's interesting because I have been a little absent from social media. Fortunately, my buddy Zach keeps me informed of most of the bad stuff that goes on.
There's bad stuff?
Yeah, right. So I was
Shocking.
hopping on, getting ready for the show tonight, and I saw a discussion in my timeline, and I ran into this. I write for Inside the Pylon, and for our draft guide, we included a fantasy section, and I did the IDP because I was the most familiar, and I know the terminology edge. That's all the rage. The cool kids are using edge and all of that, but you don't have an edge category.
No.
So I stuck with tradition, and our draft guide used the term edge. I stuck with the traditional terminology because that's how it's classified in all of the leagues that I've ever played in. I've never seen a category, pick edge, right? And so there's this, and I noticed some fantasy guys were having a discussion with a fantasy website about that category. Do you think that it should be changed, or should we stick with the standard DB, LB, DL kind of DE kind of categories?
Well, I think for me, you can, if you're smart enough, you can take advantage of those positional designations for guys that maybe play, a more varied role.
Absolutely.
So I kind of like that. I'm always looking for the edges, but I think you could say the same thing on the other side of the ball with these guys that are coming in. I can call them satellite players, but I mean, they're basically running backs who catch the ball a lot. I mean,
even tight ends that are kind of wide receivers.
Right. Exactly. We're seeing,
Marcus Colston, y'all. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. He turned into a really damn good receiver over the course of time for a guy that was a tight end. So and turned into a true wide receiver. And maybe the Giants have a guy like that. And a speedy tight end Ingram. So I guess for me, that's the kind of thing that I like to be able to take advantage of. Last year, a lot of people were able to cash in on Ty Montgomery, as a wide receiver who got the ball a hell of a lot.
They finally got that changed, but yeah,
right. But
there's always that guy. Well, there's one guy every year.
Right. There were some sites, that were quicker to jump on that than other sites. Let it go once he started out. And I think you see a lot more of that on defense, to be honest with you, than on offense. But there's probably going to be some sites that list Andre Ellington as a running back, at least over the year because they weren't on top of things and know that he's changed the wide receiver. So I don't know if that'll work to anybody's advantage. But I think, those are the kind of things that I think you're looking for. And on defense, you can actually take advantage of those things. I think a fair amount when guys are, whether they're a defensive end or a linebacker, is a big one. Yeah,
it is.
I think it matters
strange.
more. I think it probably matters more in IDP.
Yes.
Possibly than anything else because if you're playing in a PPR league where you have flex positions, who cares?
Right. No, I agree with you. It's a bigger deal. It's something you can more easily take advantage of in IDP games than any other spot.
It's a little weird. Like in baseball, you get excited about players who get multi-position eligibility. As I haven't played fantasy baseball in like a decade, but that happens where you have guys who can play multiple positions. But in football, like NFL, every year, Mario Williams, I had him since his rookie year, and it would be like for 3 or 4 years, he'd be like, he's a defensive end. Next year, he's a linebacker. And as a linebacker, he was like linebacker 40. As a defensive end, he was like defensive end 8.
Right.
It really made a big difference, and it was tough. And that's one of those things they're dealing with, but they haven't done well. Like Jabril Peppers, like he's listed as a safety, but he played linebacker in college. He might even play some offense in the NFL, and you just don't know. What's going to happen. Like some guys, Christian McCaffrey is going to be maybe like a hybrid guy, but
as well as Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, and the guy who kind of got the ball rolling last year, Tyreek Hill. First, let me just go on the record here as saying, fantasy baseball, really?
It's still out there. I know. I mentioned it was at 53 minutes in. Yeah.
All right.
Shot. Yeah, shot. Anyway, done. Yeah. I know other sports. What are these things? What is this alchemy?
I have
Well, I'm
problems with
sorry.
any game played with horsehide. I mean, pigskin, it's okay. We're eating them anyway, but a horse, come on.
I'm not even gonna go there. Yeah, I still don't even know who Zach is because he likes hockey now, and he was always a
He just likes the
sports
playoff
monogamous.
beards. I think that's the thing.
Maybe that's
Because
what
I
it
can't
is.
grow and it looks bad. And actually, there are shows that have me with it. And maybe I'll grow it during the beach trip, and then Sharona can see
What
the
beach are you going
result.
to?
I can grow a better beard than you.
Probably. I'm going to Destin and then Panama City, and got a lot of this with me. So
These are in Florida. I have to confess, I went to St. Thomas
Oh,
in March.
how fun
And
is that?
they have a beach there. It's like an island, so it's like a beach all the way around, kind of. It's remarkable. And I may go there again one day.
Look at you. What's the current schedule? How does it shift with Sirius? Because you're not doing 4 hours a day right now.
No. No, in the off season we do go a little lighter. It's Football Diehards is on Saturday nights from, let me do the time conversion in my head. From 8 to 10, I think it's 8 to 10 Eastern. We're on every Saturday night, and then that'll pick up in July, late July. We'll start moving up to the everyday. So we've been doing that all off season. There's been a lot of special shows. For the draft, we were on 4 hours a day for every day of the draft, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we did a post-draft on Sunday. We always go to the Super Bowl. They take us there and let us broadcast live from Radio Row, so we did shows every day there. And there are various times when we might get preempted for that baseball thing you were talking about.
How dare they?
Yeah.
Shocking. I guess they draft, these fantasy baseball teams still draft their leagues or whatever that is they do. Whatever. Yeah. So there's a time or two when I was actually got a Saturday night off, which I promptly did not take advantage of.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Bob?
You did not lose Bob. Someone was calling me on my phone, which comes into my iPad too. Technology. It's a great thing.
He's very, very popular. What's the DFS field for this year? I know there are certain states where daily is kind of being pushed aside. And I feel so bad for my friend Mike Margosian who lives in Massachusetts. I don't feel bad for him because he has lots of great beer and he's a Patriots fan, but he can't play MFL 10s because it's been banned. So.
Right.
I don't think I can either. Tennessee can't either, right, Bob?
Yeah, that is correct. Is there Texas, Arizona?
You know those states off the top of your head?
Is it Illinois, I think, as well? No, Illinois you can't.
We're still good in Georgia. Come on down.
But that's, it is kind of I feel bad for people. I know Jeff Mance, my Sunday co-host from Guru Elite, he's in Arizona. He needs to make lineups, but he can't cash in. So there are issues, for everybody. I think the weird thing about all this is the DFS came roaring in with a lot of money and a lot of people, in the industry, jumped for quick because we all like the money, right? It's money. Wow. That's fantastic. And now, after much of their money is gone to legal fees, and I think they've made it harder for some of the smaller companies. I know there's a small fantasy trade association, small business fantasy trade association out there. And I think they needed to do that because the FSTA, they've really put a lot of effort into working on the DFS angle, the big scale, but that's a 2-man show right now. I mean, and not to say that some of the smaller companies don't do a great job, but I mean, it's kind of dominated by DraftKings and FanDuel, and they've driven a lot of legislation. So the smaller companies, the My Fantasy leagues, my call is, that takes a big chunk out of his pocket to have to pay. Each state has their own, fee to be able to.
It's amazing how money greases the wheels.
It is amazing how money greases the wheels. But again, we all felt. I mean, and I'm as guilty as anyone. I work for companies that take advertising, from the DFS, and there was so much of it, and I just, I look back on that golden, and you wonder if FanDuel and DraftKings, if they realize now that when you go on the television box every 30 seconds saying, we're giving away $2 billion. Look, everyone wants some of that, right? It's not just people who play the game. It's the government. I mean, they've obviously learned that, and lawyers and all kinds of people want some
Damn
of that $2
lawyers.
billion. And yes, curse you. But that's how the world works, right? So it was funny. I remember watching Outside the Lines when they were really getting into the insider thing that was never really an insider thing. Imagine that. It was fake news. But the whole
I'm mad at OTL. Don't get me started.
they had a they were doing a thorough discussion, and they were having all sides, but they also had a senator on. I'm trying to remember which one, and I probably could if I tried really hard. But he was kind of saying, he talked for 5 minutes about the perils of gambling and DFS and this and that and the other. Then his last comment was he was talking about the projected revenues through 2020. Okay. So we know what you're interested in is what's your cut? I mean, that's basically what everyone said. What's my cut? And so the cut is much smaller for a lot of people. I think the one thing that's kind of, that I'm torn about this, but I mean, look, we all want to make money. One of the things that DFS did was it created a lot of content. It drove a lot of content, and it allowed a lot of people to get paid for the content that they previously weren't being paid to create. And some of that's going away, right? And that, I was a founding member of the Fantasy Sports Writers Association. There were 4 of us who started that, and one of our goals was to get people paid, who created content. Because there's, look, this is an industry where there's a lot of people out there willing to work for, exposure. And I'd like to see everyone get paid. And for everyone to get paid, there has to be money. And those guys brought a lot of money to the entire hobby. And so, I'm kind of on board with that. I'm kind of on board with writers getting paid. And so I'd like to see more of that. And I don't think there'll be more of that with the big money out of the DFS or at least, the big money being spent on things other than content.
Yeah, there are every fantasy website now has to have its own DFS section. So
yes,
that's a positive thing. But we've smartly let Bob, dominate the conversation tonight. But we can't do a show without doing at least one over it or nah with Sharona. And I'm gonna a bit of a softball for you. Over it or nah, the Peyton statue. Indianapolis is doing a statue of Peyton Manning that they're going to unveil this year.
Okay.
I want to know what your feels are.
I'm surprised it has taken this long. We all know what Peyton meant to the Indianapolis Colts and their ascension, and the AFC South would not be the AFC South. It's taken a dent. It's very dented from the last few years, and it hasn't been very good. But I remember the halcyon days when the AFC South was good, the Jags were good, the Titans are improving, and maybe the Jags are too. And we'll get back to that. So I'm down with it.
I miss the AFC Central though; those were the good days when the Titans and Jaguars were in there with like the Steelers and all the teams that are now in the North, and of course.
I'm a little curious. The statue of Peyton, have we made it yet? Is it going to be made of bronze? What material is it in? Because I need to make a quick investment because the forehead alone.
The forehead, yeah.
The forehead alone will drive prices up beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted someone else to make a forehead joke before me. If you ever seen the Draw Play cartoons, the Peyton every time his forehead is even like up to the sky. But the last time we talked, it was before the 2016 season, so we had no idea what exotic Smash Mouth was going to be, and the Titans really blew it out of the water.
Who kept telling y'all?
Is this except Derrick Henry? Oh, sorry.
I still believe in Derrick Henry.
He's still good, yeah.
His time will come. And maybe sooner than later. It was funny because I can remember thinking, we all got a big chuckle out of Mike Mularkey talking about the exotic Smash Mouth, which really wasn't him, but it was kind of pinned to him. And boy, this is when you have the right personnel, it turns out it works pretty damn good. And the right personnel being a mauling offensive line, and a running back who thrives on heavy usage. And I think we saw, I'm interested to see what DeMarco Murray can do again this year. I think a lot of people are going to overpay for him. I know that he got, broke down a little bit late in the season, manned up to his credit. I mean, did a great job playing with the bad foot. But I just wonder, and the Titans are saying otherwise, at this point, that he's still it and everything. You just wonder if we're not going to see a heavier dose of Henry this year, just based on the usage of Murray.
I think we almost have to, and they have to see what they have in Henry, because rookie contracts are shorter, and the history with these rookie skill players suggests that yes, you will, and you'll see him earlier and more often.
I wonder how many teams too are going to be forcing quarterbacks. I mean, look, they do it every year, but it's usually the higher round guys that you'd expect to. But I mean, I wonder, look, Seattle's had a great deal of success over the last few years, in large part because they were paying their quarterback nothing, because he came in and became the starter on a reasonable rookie deal. Dak Prescott allows the Cowboys a lot of leeway in that regard as well. And I think the economic advantage that comes from having a rookie quarterback come in and play well. It's obviously the higher, the guys that you'd like to see, get better opportunities tend to go to the losing teams, et cetera. So maybe someone that we don't expect at all ends up doing that. But I'll be paying more attention when they start talking about guys actually competing, much like Pete Carroll did with Russell Wilson back when he came in.
Yeah, I wonder if this year we'll see the return to letting the rookie quarterback sit. Like Mahomes is behind Alex Smith, right? Who could start. Now Deshaun Watson, Tom Savage has as many, wins as I do. I think he may have one. He doesn't have any touchdowns, but it's okay.
Right.
So we'll see.
That's kind of my thought too. Watson seems like the guy that I'd be most interested in if he could get the job. I mean, he's got some pretty good supporting cast there, both sides of the ball.
Andy Reid's not going to play a rookie quarterback if he can.
If he does, unless he has to. Look,
unless he has to.
Dictate, the Cowboys weren't going to play Dak Prescott either until Tony Romo fell on his ass and broke his back. So things happen. So it's something to watch. I mean, no one's going to get excited about a Cleveland quarterback, but at some point they're bound to hit on one, right?
Yeah, at some point.
Maybe.
Are you ever worried about now that the quarterbacks who've recently retired are getting these really cushy announcing gigs? You think in a few years Brock Osweiler might take your job as a fantasy analyst? Probably not him. Maybe Vince Young. No, that's too soon.
I would like to see some of the currently retired guys. The new crop coming in excel as broadcasters. So I'll wait. I'll withhold judgment until I hear Tony Romo and Jay Cutler not say between every breath.
Jay Cutler.
Vanderbilt. Yeah. Do you not kind of think in the back of your mind that Jay Cutler might be so much better at this than we, would he not be the guy to just totally surprise you? Because we all have such a locked in impression, of Jay Cutler. I mean, he's got, we've all decided what he is based on, seeing him for 60 minutes of a week every Sunday without actually knowing who he is. It would not totally surprise me if he was someone completely not what we expect.
Yeah, it's definitely been a few memes have pushed it, and him the smoking and all that.
Unless he does it naked, and then with his girlfriend take photos of him.
That's a different kind of
go, Jerry.
Well, gosh, we've gone an hour plus, but with Bob Harris and the energy you bring, you could do this for hours, I'm sure.
I ramble because again, I'm old. So
I forgot to ask the question, so who did you talk to before you had a radio show? Someone who's listening to your football talk.
The cats.
Oh, we didn't see any cats visited.
One of whom is resting peacefully next to me, pretending I pretend he listens, but he just sleeps.
Yeah. He says, those talks, the hot takes, they help me sleep. They put me to sleep every time. They're like, hey, can you talk about football for 5 minutes? I need to sleep. Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Wait, that's my wife too. Anyway, that's how it goes. So, Bob, where do people find you? So you got magazines coming out. You have a show. You have, and it seems like there's a Football Diehards podcast happening. What's going on?
Yeah, there is a Football Diehards podcast, Justin Lanero. Does a great job with that. Has been rounding up some great guests. I believe he's going to have Adam Schefter on later this month. Had Mike Clay on this week. So definitely, yeah, I might even make the cut at some point. And he's doing a great job with that. You can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio during the offseason every Saturday night, 6 to 8. This week I'll be doing a solo show without my co-host Mike Dempsey. So that's always interesting because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So that makes it all the more fun. Matt Waldman will be one of the guests from the Rookie Scouting Portfolio.
You'll be just fine.
Yeah, you right? You just pull the string and let him go. It's kind of like me, except he knows what he's talking about. And he's not just goofy. And then you can check out footballdiehards.com. There's all kinds of content always going up there, a lot of articles, a lot of news, et cetera, et cetera. And the magazines will be coming out. I do want to say Football Diehards was the FSTA Magazine of the Year, and a lot of people put a lot of effort into that, and that's always a good feeling. You're not kind of doing it for that, but when your team gets a win, you want to.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Yeah. And if you need any, fantasy experts to do drafts for you, I think I know somebody over there, Sharona. She's the one who will get Derrick Henry before anybody else. Just to let you know. Sharona, what's happening on your side?
I sent you a Taj J. Sharp article, by the way.
Oh, no, I don't want to say it in public. It's too soon. Go ahead.
I know, right? So hopefully we're working on doing a podcast on Friday. We were going to do it today, but it didn't work out schedule-wise for everyone. So check out that, Back Talk with Sharona. And, of course, every Wednesday night with my buddy Zach.
Perfecto. And it's Zach_Law on Twitter. And if you do follow me on Facebook, please do, because next week from the beach, I'll probably be posting the beer I'm drinking at 9 in the morning every day because I can.
Can I just say, I got the best recipe on your Facebook page that I've gotten in a long time.
Was that the pizza dough?
Yes, it was fantastic. It was phenomenal. And
I don't even know who did it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a heavy dough. I mean, I do pizza dough, but that was like a pizza dough made of
cheese,
flour, cheese, and eggs,
cream cheese, and eggs.
It was heavy.
And I mean, you can eat like 6 slices, and you're down for the count. But it was tasty. It was a lot better than I expected.
So see, you get use out of it, out of the old Facebooks and the Twitters. Well, thanks everybody for being on again, Bob. You're just freaking awesome, and you got the stuff going on behind you all the time, nonstop action, the opposite of a cat. So thanks again, and of course Sharona for being on, and thanks everybody. And I forgot to say hi, Don. Hi, Don. And let's just say, kiss my grits.